Before the sun breached the horizon, Whispering Pines National Forest lay cloaked in a cool pre-dawn hush. At 5:45 a.m., Ranger Miguel Santos slipped into his olive green field jacket and strapped on his rucksack, its radio's static hum the only sound beneath towering Douglas firs. He followed the gravel service road, its ruts still holding last night's dew, toward Fire Lookout 3, checking his handheld anemometer, wind 4 miles per hour from the southeast, humidity 28%, temperature 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Above him, the forest canopy stirred as red squirrels emerged from knotholes at the bases of ancient pines. One in particular, known to rangers as Ember, scurried along a moss-heaped branch, her russet fur glowing in the dim, diffused light. She paused at a cluster of glossy acorns nestled in a fork of lichen-covered bark. Santos reached Lookout 3 by 6:10 a.m., radioing the fire tower. All quiet on my end. No smoke, no hot spots. He logged observations in his digital tablet, noting the dried duff and the pungent scent of pine resin carried by each gust. The forest bed, layered with needles and dead wood from last autumn's storms, was tinder dry, prime for ignition if a stray spark appeared. Ember, meanwhile, leaped from branch to branch, clutching an acorn in each tiny paw. But as dawn's rosy glow warmed the eastern sky, she caught a faint acrid note on the breeze, the distant tang of burning resin and smoldering bark. Her black eyes narrowed. Instead of stashing her harvest, she hurled the nearest acorn downward with uncharacteristic force. The nut struck the forest floor with a sharp thud, thud, echoing through the silent glen like a drumbeat in the still air. Below, Ranger Santos paused mid-stride, headlamp beam sweeping to the source of the sound beyond the service road. He frowned at the empty ground. No log falling, no tool dropped. Distant bird calls resumed their gentle chorus, but something about that double thud resonated with urgency. Unknowing of the hidden threat, both Ranger and Squirrel prepared to act on nature's earliest alarm, the first nut drop in a signal sequence that would soon lead them to a smoldering ember and avert a forest disaster. At 6:22 a.m., Ember paused mid-forage as a waft of acrid smoke drifted through the fir branches. The scent, subtly bitter and unfamiliar, set her small heart racing. With practiced precision, she hefted a plump acorn in her paws, climbed to a sturdy limb overhanging the forest floor, and flung it downward. The nut struck a tangle of dry pine needles with a resonant thud, its echo rippling through the half-light. Below, Ranger Santos, still winding his way back toward the service road, heard the sound like a single drumbeat in the dawn stillness. He stopped and scanned the undergrowth. No fallen branch, no misplaced tool. Confused, he raised his binoculars, but saw only the soft, needle-strewn ground. Ember, sensing her message had registered, repeated the gesture, this time hurling 2 more acorns in rapid succession. Each thud, thud rose and fell like a warning drum, growing louder as a gentle breeze shifted. Santos's instincts, honed by years of backcountry patrols, told him that wildlife seldom makes such deliberate noise without cause. He radioed Lookout 3. Possible smoke indicator at grid 34B. Heard 3 sharp thuds in quick succession. Unseen by human eyes, Ember darted along the branch, staying alert as she prepared her next signal. Below, Santos pivoted to head toward the sound's origin, ready to investigate the forest's hidden alarm and uncover whatever danger lay beyond the trees. At 6:25 a.m., Ember's acute senses discerned the smoke's rising intensity. From her vantage point 12 meters above the forest floor, she dropped another acorn, this time with 3 deliberate thud, thud, thud beats, each separated by 0.5 seconds. The rapid sequence rang through the silent pine glade like a Morse code alarm. Below, Ranger Santos had advanced toward the previous thud points, brushing aside fern fronds and scanning for signs of fire. The triple thud reached him as he neared a fallen log at grid 34B. He halted, heart pounding, and swept the area with his binoculars. At 6:26 a.m., he caught the faintest wisp of gray curling above the ridgeline, smoke obscured by early morning mist, just visible where sunlight pierced the pines 150 meters away. Santos keyed his radio mic with urgent precision. Lookout 3, this is Ranger Santos. I'm seeing a thin smoke column at 150 meters southwest of my position. Grid 34B. Repeat. 3 rapid thuds indicated fire. Repeat, fire. His voice crackled over the frequency as he switched on his infrared sensor. The screen flickered to reveal a warm patch, 115 degrees Fahrenheit, beneath dense duff, confirming smoldering embers in a blind spot beyond the tree line. Back at the lookout tower, fire watcher Eileen Chen adjusted her scope and caught the plume curling through the morning haze. She activated the siren protocol. All units, Engine 7 and Hand Crew Alpha, respond to 34B for a possible ground fire. Within seconds, diesel engines roared to life at the ranger station, and young firefighters strapped on their gear. Unaware of the unfolding human response, Ember dipped her tail in satisfaction before darting off to warn fellow squirrels. Below her, Santos closed in on the source of the smoke, following the pattern set by nature's smallest sentinels, and prepared to confront the hidden blaze before it could erupt into a forest inferno. By 6:30 a.m., the siren's wail echoed through whispering pines as Engine 7's diesel engine roared to life at the ranger station. Captain Marisol Vega donned her helmet and slung on her pack, relaying orders to Hand Crew Alpha. Move out to Grid 34B. Possible ground fire beneath the duff. Ranger Santos has confirmed smoke and heat signatures. Let's go. Moments later, Santos led the 4-man crew down the narrow game trail, the team's boots crunching on pine needles. Each firefighter carried a Pulaski, a McLeod rake, and a 1.5-inch hose line connected to a portable pump slung over their shoulders. Santos consulted his GPS. 34.2035 degrees north, 118.5472 degrees west, then pointed southwest beneath a stand of towering firs. Sound of the thuds and the last infrared ping came from just beyond that fallen hemlock, he said, voice low but urgent. Ahead, Hand Crew member Diaz flicked on his headlamp, illuminating clumps of dry needles and patches of moss. The air was thick with the acrid tang of smoldering resin. Captain Vega knelt to inspect scorched duff at the trail's edge. A patch roughly 4 feet across glowed faintly, its center 115 degrees Fahrenheit on her infrared gauge, while wisps of smoke curled from beneath a pine root. We've found it, she announced. Let's establish a perimeter. The crew fanned out in a semicircle, raking away the dry layer down to mineral soil, while Santos advanced to hose down embers with steady sweeps. Each acorn-marked thud site, one at the hemlock stump, another near a boulder, now lay inside their containment line. Within 10 minutes, the smoldering patch was fully wet down, its ashes damp and cold. With the hidden fire extinguished before it could spread uphill, Santos gathered up the cluster of fallen acorns, the very nuts Ember had dropped, and handed them to Vega. She examined them thoughtfully under her headlamp, then secured them in an evidence pouch with a note. Nut drop markers led us here. Prevented ignition of duff layer. As the crew packed up their gear, the forest seemed to exhale, a gentle breeze ruffling pine needles overhead. Thanks to Ember's instinctive alarm and the swift response of Engine 7's crew, what might have become a roaring blaze remained nothing more than a faint memory in the morning air. The forest was safe, its guardians, both human and squirrel, having performed their duty in perfect harmony. Under the shafts of morning light filtering through the fir canopy, the crew moved with precision around the smoldering duff. Captain Vega knelt beside the collapsed hemlock's root wad, where tiny tendrils of smoke curled from beneath a carpet of dried needles. She placed her hand close to the soil, feeling the heat radiating from the fine ash below. This is a deep-seated ember bed, she warned. Firefighter Diaz used his Pulaski to rake aside the duff, exposing glowing coals that had burned through several inches of organic material. Each scoop released a swirl of smoke, and Vega's infrared gauge lit up with readings of 130 degrees Fahrenheit at the coal's core. The gradient of heat increased upslope, where the ground pitched upward at a 20-degree incline toward denser forest, prime terrain for rapid fire spread. Santos directed paramedic-turned-volunteer Ortega to deploy a 100-foot hose lay from Engine 7's pump unit. With his partner handling nozzle adjustments, Ortega swept a fine spray of water over the ember bed, forced upward by the slight wind that had picked up to 6 miles per hour. Each targeted burst hissed against the coals, dropping surface temperatures to 90 degrees Fahrenheit and reducing smoke output. Meanwhile, hand crew member Lewis widened the fire line using his McLeod rake, carving a 1.5-meter gap through mineral soil around the entire perimeter of the embers. He cut through hidden roots and rolling stones, creating a sterile barrier free of any combustible material. Sparks flew, clattering like hail against his helmet, but the line held firm against the steam-masked smoke. As the crew worked systematically clockwise, the whine of the portable pump grew steadier. Vega spotted a secondary ember bed beneath a fallen branch 20 feet upslope, likely carried by wind-driven sparks. She radioed Santos, who confirmed with his infrared scan 105 degrees Fahrenheit at the new site. "We'll need a spot check there," she said, dispatching Lewis and Ortega to repeat the wetline tactic. Within 20 minutes, every isolated ember and smoldering root was soaked, the soil darkened to damp brown, and smoke reduced to a wispy gray. Vega patted the back of her pack in satisfaction. Ember beds extinguished. This area is secure. Santos collected the cluster of acorns Ember had dropped, the precise markers that had led them here, and placed them in his vest pocket alongside his GPS notes. Looking up, he saw the forest floor cool beneath their feet, its needles and duff now void of any glowing threat. In the hush that followed, the team disassembled their lines and tools, knowing that a single squirrel's nut drop signal had revealed hidden embers before they could ignite, and that human resolve had extinguished them all. By 7:05 a.m., the once hidden embers were thoroughly extinguished. Engine 7's portable pump hissed its last gush of water as Hand Crew Alpha completed mop-up, stamping and raking every loosened needle to ensure no glowing coal remained. The undergrowth, once at risk of bursting into flame, now lay damp and safe under the morning sun. Captain Marisol Vega surveyed the scene, her infrared gauge showing uniform ground temperatures of 55 degrees Fahrenheit. No hotspots detected. She turned to Ranger Santos, who held the cluster of embers nut signals, 5 acorns marked with their respective times: 6:22 a.m., 6:23 a.m., 6:25 a.m., 6:27 a.m., 6:28 a.m., and GPS coordinates. Santos logged each nut's location in his digital report. 6:22 a.m. Single thud. Grid 34. First scent detection. 6:23 a.m. 2 rapid thuds, 20 meters east, escalating smoke. 6:25 a.m. 3 rapid thuds, 12 meters north of the hemlock. 6:27 a.m. Single thud, 15 meters upslope, secondary ember bed. 6:28 a.m. Single thud, 8 meters beyond ember bed. Final confirmation. "Without these," Vega said, holding up the acorn cluster, "we'd have never found the smoldering roots, too deep beneath the duff to see or smell until it was too late." Santos nodded, adding, "Ember's signals gave us a 20-minute head start on a fire that could have reached canopy level in under an hour." Back at the ranger station, Santos submitted his combined wildlife behavior report and fire suppression logs to the Forest Service database, recommending the inclusion of nut drop signal recognition in future fire detection training. Within hours, his report was forwarded to regional headquarters, where fire ecologists lauded the innovative use of animal behavior in early fire detection. As the crew packed up their tools, Ranger Santos took one last look at the still, fragrant forest. Sunlight filtered through fresh green needles overhead. Bird calls returned to the canopy's hush. In this moment of calm, he felt profound gratitude, not only for his team's skill, but for a squirrel named Ember, whose simple nut drop signals had turned potential catastrophe into a morning saved. On a crisp morning 2 weeks after the fire scare, Whispering Pines National Forest hosted a special ceremony at the trailhead for Grid 34B rangers, firefighters, and local families gathered beneath a banner reading, "Guardians of the Forest." In the center stood a polished granite pedestal topped with a bronze relief of Ember mid-drop, tiny paws outstretched, acorns suspended in midair. Ranger Miguel Santos stepped forward in his dress uniform, holding the cluster of acorns Ember had dropped on that fateful dawn. "These nuts," he said, voice warm, "were our first warning, each thud guiding us to smoldering embers that could have become a raging inferno." He placed the acorns in a glass display case built into the pedestal's base. Park Superintendent Elena Vega then unveiled the plaque inscribed, "In honor of Ember the Squirrel, whose nut drop warning revealed hidden embers and saved these woods." July 8th, 2025. A hushed reverence fell as a family of red squirrels, drawn by the ceremony, scurried through the underbrush, pausing at the monument's edge. Children from the Junior Ranger program laid wreaths of pine cones and wildflower garlands at the base, while Deputy Fire Chief Marisol Vega locked the display case with a ceremonial key stamped "Forest's First Alarm." As sunlight filtered through the pines, the assembled guests listened to the soft rustle of needles overhead, a reminder that nature's smallest inhabitants can deliver the loudest alarms. From that day on, whenever visitors hiked these trails, they paused at Ember's memorial, grateful to the squirrel whose simple nut drop signal had protected an entire forest.